guys? I'm back here at Lee Cycle in San Diego. Don't forget they are a dealer for BT Moto, so if you have any BT Moto parts you want to buy or handhelds, not only can you buy from them, but they will also help you install it on your motorcycle. So today I'm here with the 2026 M1000RR, and we also have our Stage 2 package on it, including the IAT Kit. We have the full exhaust system, and we'll also be testing some experimental velocity stacks to see exactly what we can do with this new 52mm opening we have here on top of the throttle bodies. The story doesn't start here at Lee's. The story starts when I'm modding the bike. And what we'll be doing today is installing a Akrapovic header system and also our IAT kit, and I'll be walking through some helpful tips on how to install these parts, as well as comparisons in weight from the stock exhaust to the aftermarket exhaust and other comparisons I see along the way. So we're going to start with the exhaust install first, and the first part of this exhaust install is going to be removing the lower side panels here. These are lower panels we can remove with a few bolts. I'm also going to remove the entire side panel because I got to prep for the IAT anyway, and plus it makes it easier to get in where you see those headers and some of the bolts. Now to remove the exhaust is very simple. I'll start here with the slip-on, and we'll remove the support for the slip-on and the clamp, and this will pull right off the motorcycle. Then we'll move on to the rear O2s here. We'll disconnect those, unscrew them completely so they're hanging, dangling off the bike, and then we'll go to the front O2s and just remove the connectors for the front O2s. And we also can't forget about that pesky exhaust valve. That's also got to be removed with the exhaust system, which is pretty easy. It's a couple bolts, the cables, you pull the cables out to the top, then the actual module is able to drop to the bottom. We also got to remove this hanger right here. That's a T30. When you get to this point, what I'd recommend here is removing the oil cooler completely. It's just two bolts right here. They're T25s, one on each side. They are thread locked in there, so make sure you thread lock them back when you put them there. But after you take this down, make sure you wrap it in cardboard. This is going to give you a little bit of room here between header that you can jiggle everything out here properly. After you're done putting cardboard on it should look something like this. You see right here, I've got basically the oil cooler being protected by this, and it's going to reduce any kind of bending of the fins when we try to maneuver the header out of here. Then we'll also remove that bolt way back there, if you see it. That kind of holds the whole cat in place. Now it's just a matter of removing these 10.10mm nuts right here, and there's 8 of them, 2 for each cylinder. Then we just got to remove this nut back here, and the whole system's going to drop to the ground, and we can remove it completely out of the bike. All right, now you can see we got the exhaust fully out of here. Some things to note here. These are the knock sensors, one right there and one right over there. You want to make sure these do not have damage on them because that could be a problem for your bike. Now you can see these awesome M1000 oval ports here. We'll be looking at the new exhaust as well to see how that looks. And one other thing to note here is I definitely bent the bottom of this support here. This is normal when I'm pulling the header down through here. It'll tend to bend this little tab up here. Just take a pair of pliers. As you can see, I bent that right back. Perfectly fine. You can see the cardboard did its job. We're not having any bending of the fins here, and the cardboard itself took the brunt of everything. So that's exactly what we wanted it to do, and not hurt this, but also have some maneuverability where we can get the headers out. So you can see right here, these are the new oval exhaust ports here for the M1000RR. And yeah, definitely has a flange in here, like a little bump right there to make this a little bit wider than stock. Definitely a different header setup than the previous M1000RR. And we have all the Acra parts right here, and you can see the Acra even, same thing. Oval exhaust port right there. But this is odd now. It looks like they trimmed right here. This is the same mid pipe we had before, and they changed this piece of it right there to now accommodate for that. So instead of reformulating a brand new exhaust system here, they've just kind of cut it and then added these in here. That looks like the main difference. And we have a 4, we have a 1, which the instructions are about as vague could possibly get, so I have no idea what the 4 and 1 actually means. I assume one into the other. I'll have to figure that out. And these two are exactly the same with no numbering on them whatsoever, so I assume these are both center cylinders and they're both exactly the same since they have the same part numbers. Makes that pretty easy for me. Now let's go ahead and see the weight difference here. All right, let's see what the stock exhaust weighs here. Let's try to move it onto the scale here. Stock exhaust. That, everything will stop falling off of it. That'd be great. All right. 13.2 pounds. Now keep in mind, this is a full titanium system from the factory, not the stainless system. So 13.2 pounds. Now we have the Acra at 5.6 pounds right there, full titanium system. Keep in mind, we are also keeping the stock muffler right there and attaching it to this. So that is not part of this equation. You can, of course, go to different slip-on and be different weight savings. So we have a total of 7.6 pounds saved moving to the Acra titanium optional versus the OEM titanium. Now before you install the new system, I'd recommend some rubbing alcohol. Just wipe the entire system down and use gloves because you don't want to actually put fingerprints on this. They will burn in once you install it and start the bike up. Or if you don't have any rubber gloves available, just go ahead and wipe it down with rubbing alcohol thoroughly after you install it. I also went ahead and put the adapters in here for the narrow bands because they are smaller than the wide bands. We are going to put all the exhaust sensors back into this motorcycle because with our tuning we have full-time closed loop, meaning these exhaust sensors will actually tune the motorcycle as you ride it. If you leave those out, it can't tune itself. It kind of loses the whole idea of this is a modern motorcycle. It puts it kind of 20 years in the past. All right, we finally have the exhaust on here. Couple things to note here while I was doing this. What I did was I put these on first and then bolted them in completely. And I started with the centers and then I did the two ends. Now, this you'll notice is number 4. So number 4 is on the brake side. Number 1 is on the clutch side of the bike, and that seems to work well. Now everything else bolted up very well here, no issues whatsoever, except we do have a little bit of contact on the swing arm here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's literally right down there, you can see. And it comes off, but it's probably gonna vibrate, honestly. There's nothing I can do about it. I rubber malleted this whole thing in to make sure it was as close as I humanly could get it. And this is the best it's gonna be. And you can see I have the factory slip on here. But yeah, that contact there is no good. That's not a Kropovich quality. So a couple other notes here. I sprung these after I bolted everything in. And then of course I put this side in first with these two headers, then put that side in, sprung everything, and then put the bottom in here with the collectors, and then put the slip-on on there. Now of course I have to button some things up like the O2 sensors. I have to put the hanger back. I have to put the oil cooler back, but this is it. I'm gonna button it up real quick and then we're gonna move on to the IAT sensor. A couple more tips for you guys here. I know you have to move the O2 sensors from the very front here to the back, so you have to reroute this a little bit. This is how I route it. Underneath the pan here and just kind of zip tie the excess here. The last thing you want is any of this wiring to touch the header or be even close to it. On the other side here is a little more tricky. You can see the sensor right here, the connector. And I had to route the wiring, instead of being here, up through here. So you can see it to that OEM hook, and there's an OEM hook over there I also ran it through. So there's no zip ties on this thing, but it's also not even touching or anywhere close to the header, none of the wiring. And then I ran it under here, and you can see it ran through here to there. Typically this rear O2 sensor is connected to this other cable here, and I disconnect them and pull this out and get that one back there as well. Now a trick to getting those sensors in there is I actually reverse ravel them. So if I'm gonna be spinning it righty-tighty, I go lefty-loosey a whole bunch of turns until the wiring's all bound up, and then I go righty-tighty in so you have a nice and straight cable. Let me give you an example over here of exactly what I'm talking about. You can see how that looks straight, even though I didn't touch the connector here. All the wiring's straight and not tangled up. I don't like that look. To me, it looks very unprofessional. So I go counterclockwise a bunch and then go clockwise, and usually comes out straight, so it's not all bound up. Everything else came together very nicely. The exhaust is finished. Now it's just time for a startup. Let's see how she reacts with the new exhaust and see how it sounds. Oh yeah. All right, she's sounding good. So now it's time to move on to the IAT. To do the IAT, we're gonna have to break down the entire air box. We're gonna have to start from the top, work our way down, pull the tank off, remove all the electronics so it exposes the air box itself. Now, a note to everyone here that does the install on the 26 M1000RR for IAT Kit, you can use our 2324 video. Now that I've gotten this far down on the IAT Kit, let me show you exactly what I'm talking about here. This is the IAT right here. It's the intake air temperature sensor. It sits on top of the engine. You can see because the engine's right there with the velocity stacks and everything. And that transfers heat very easily up to the sensor, which corrupts the data. Now the air itself coming in could be a completely different temperature than this sensor, because this sensor is soaking up a bunch of heat from the box itself rather than an actual temperature from the air. Now the actual sensor, you see right here is a piece of metal. This metal doesn't cool instantly. It takes some time for this piece to cool down. And because plastic will transfer the heat to this will not give you a true ambient value. In fact, when riding on the freeway, this takes about 10 miles before it actually reads sort of accurately, and it's still about 10 degrees higher than actual ambient. So when we move this, we're gonna move this thing to the front right here, and that's gonna give us actual ambient, something I can actually check on a watch. I did a whole video comparison of the IAT, you can see there on the top right. And typically you don't have to pull the air box off of this, but in order to make this wiring perfect, I go through this harness right here and zip tie everything up. I have a whole video on this, you can see there on the top right as well. And the only difference, like I said before, is going to be this piece right here. You gotta push the logo out from the back, unscrew this, and then this fairing will come off. That's the only difference I'm seeing so far with the motorcycle. So I'll be installing this IAT, which is our typical kit. Nothing changes the IAT at all. The only thing I noticed that was different is the pair valve here, because the air box has changed. The pair valve has to be removed in order to change out the filter, which is a little crazy. We didn't have to do that on any of the previous models, S or M. Now, as far as the air filters go, this is the standard 20 through 25 S1000RR and up to 24 M1000RR air filter here. This is the 26. We have 20% more surface area. You see if I put this exactly like right here, the whole top of this thing is bigger, and that means we're getting a lot more air. So we need a performance filter that hasn't been created yet. DNA sent me their first one though. This is the first one, at least I believe it's the first one, that's being put onto an M1000RR to replace the stock one. And we'll check flow, and we'll check to see if there's actually any gains on the dyno with this. Usually we don't see gains from an air filter because BMW does a very good job with their air filters, but when we add velocity stacks, coupled with that, we will see some gains from this air filter. I can see the front here is completely changed up as well, so let me pull this out real quick, and we'll see if we can actually put our air flapper delete kit, because you see the flappers right there. Those things are gonna be closed the entire time up to 6,000 RPM, and then they open up and do that. So usually they're just closed, and you're getting air from here, a little slit, and you're getting air from here up until 6,000 RPM. Our delete kit removes this completely, so you don't need it anymore. Now, our flash will leave these open 100% of the time. So you're probably asking yourself, well, why do you need the kit then? Well, you really don't need the kit unless you're looking for every ounce of power this bike can possibly give you, because we do have a sort of obstruction here in the airway. You can see right there. If we remove this, we get a little more air out of it. So that's the real difference right there. That's it. Okay guys, so I just left that on there because our kit, guess what, doesn't work. But I went ahead and removed the flappers so we get some full air coming through here without any obstruction. Our flapper kit, while it does kind of go into the port there, they definitely changed up how this looks and how this actually fits. So our flapper delete kit for the older models is no good, but I went ahead and did this anyway. So a little bit of silver lining here, guys. You can always put this back in at the top here, and if you want to plug the other holes from the flapper, like there's a hole here and a hole here, our kit actually works. You can see, lines up perfectly right there, and the hole at the bottom fits perfectly for that too. So at least that works. It's just our main block off right here does not work with this because it's a completely separate air box. So now it's time to add our IAT kit, which is essentially a extension harness. We use OEM parts here, but extends it from the top of the engine, like I said right there. I'm gonna run the line through here, up to the nose of the bike, so I gotta disassemble the front of the bike, but I'm gonna get this part started right now. Okay, I've got it routed all the way through here, and you can see I used the OEM pathway right here and a harness to get it out to the front. And of course, this is all in my tutorial as well. Now, I'll put this partially back together so at least it can function, and just test the sensor, make sure it's actually working. Then we gotta go ahead and pull apart the whole front section here. The reason for that is because even just to get into this portion, I have to pull off all of the fairings. So we'll just pull off the top here now, and that'll allow us access to the top of the inlet here. We're gonna try and make this as clean as possible. So the sensor's gonna be dangling down from here, and in order to get to that, all that has to come off. And so we got the IAT running here, and you can see I got the IAT. Check out what it does when I do this. I'm gonna hold it like this. Watch that temperature go up. See, 87, 89, see, it's working. We're doing good work right here. So that's how instant it is when you actually transfer heat to it. And now we're gonna pull the entire front apart and put the sensor right into the inlet. Okay, so now we've gotten to this point right here. All I gotta do is drill a hole and move the IAT into that hole, but I have to make sure this is all nice and clean because I can't just put this like this and just have it laying all over the fork and everything. So let's clean up the wiring, push this in, and I'll show you guys exactly what it looks like at the end here. All right, guys, so I got the IAT installed here. You can see the routing. Actually, you can barely see it. I made it where it's basically OEM. And you can see it coming up through here, basically. And I even zip tied it to everything right here. But you can barely see the zip tie because I pushed the zip tie completely out of the way, so you can't see that. It's supposed to look all OEM. And you can see it comes up through here, comes up through the bottom here, and then eventually up at the top right here. Now, how tight is this? Pretty tight. Now, if yours is a little bit loose, you can always just glue it around here, use some silicone or whatever. but I usually like to start drilling out with a 3/8 instead of a half. The 3/8 is definitely too small, so you have to kind of work your way around and open the hole up a little bit, but it'll create this nice tight fit as long as you're patient. Now we can go ahead and button up the whole bike and go back to the dyno for some numbers. So now that you saw what we did to the bike, I want to give you guys a quick note here. When doing multiple modifications at the same time, I only recommend that for people that have a lot of mechanical knowledge on a motorcycle. The reason being, if you install 20 different modifications on the motorcycle, including tuning, and one thing goes wrong, you're not going to know what that one thing is associated to. So now we got that out of the way, let's get this thing on the dyno and let's start with our baseline runs. And now I'm running the stage 1 on here right now. Let's see what that does as it sits. After the stock stage 1 tuning with exhaust and all the other mods, let's see what she did. So we got the stock right there, 208, and we got 204 out of it with our stage 1. Now keep in mind, stage 1 is not maximized for the modifications we put into it. But just to see how the bike would react with stage 1, for a stock exhaust, we threw it on here, the AFR is looking good. The power is actually looking nice and linear as well. It's not freaking out or anything like that. We did lose a total of 4-wheel horsepower, but that's also not the whole story. You can see blue here is going to be post modifications, while red is completely stock or stock with our tuning. And you can see we gained 7-wheel horsepower right there in the mid-range. This is typical for the exhaust. The exhaust is going to add this in the mid-range because we got rid of that huge suitcase in the center of the bike there. We even added 4-wheel torque. Now you can see the gains kind of pull everywhere here, and at the very top here we start trading places right up there, and we're gaining about, looks like about 3-wheel horsepower up there, up to the top. Now we're going to go ahead and do is modify the motorcycle with proper stage 2 mapping that's made for these modifications and see what the bike does. Okay, stage 2 mapping is done. Let's see those numbers. We've got in blue here, this is going to be our stage 2, and in red is going to be our stage 1. Now you can see we're doing much better here. We're about, not even a half a horsepower off here, and we're also dealing with IATs that are over 90 degrees, and that's including the IAT that we moved to the nose of the bike. Now, if the IAT was in the standard location, it would be over 110 degrees, and it's a humid day today, so it's really not looking in favor of today for these dyno pulls, but even so, I still warned you guys that aftermarket exhaust on the BMW isn't going to do much up top. It's the mid-range we're gaining everything on. The nice linear power curve, you're gaining everything back to make it more fat in the mid-range. We've got a total of 6-wheel horsepower here and a total of 3-wheel torque as well. And these gains are across the entire board here. This is something you're actually going to really feel on the motorcycle right here in the mid-range over that stage 1 mapping with the stock system. How about we get some comparisons going? Let's go ahead and start with the 23 M1000RR with similar modifications. All right, guys, here in blue, we have the 26 M1000RR, and in red, we have the 23 M1000RR, both with full systems, both with IAT relocations to make this apples to apples. And you can see they're making power in completely different ways. Now, it being an M1000RR, I like the fact in the 26, they've shifted this cam a little bit, and the way the air comes in and out of the bike. Look at that. Just all this power up top over the older M. That's 16-wheel horsepower right there, guys. And let's not even forget about the torque here, which is 5-wheel torque, and that's just up the tippy top right there. We really start separating out here at about 13,000 RPM. This is all track stuff right here. This is exactly what the M is made for. And in the mid-range, this is what we sacrificed here. 10-wheel horsepower in just this dip here, but we're averaging right around 4 or 5-wheel horsepower through this entire range, where the new M is actually lacking versus the old M. But again, like I said, we're talking about an M1000. It's made for track duty, so I like the fact that they made the shift to make the power all the way up top here. Now let's go ahead and see the 2025 S1000RR. So here we have in blue the 26 M1000RR, in a red we have the 25 S1000RR, and you can see the S1000RR is making power over the M all the way up until about 10 or about 11,000 RPMs. And then we start trading places here, and then it really starts taking over right around here, which is 12,700 RPM. We're making a little more power. And at redline, which the M has about 500 more RPM than the S, we're doing a total of 11 wheel horsepower at peak right here. So the S1000RR with that shift cam still doing amazing work in the low and mid range. If you're a real track rat, I would say get the M1000RR for that last little bit up here if you are really dedicated for tracking stuff. But if you do track every once in a while here and there and mainly in the street, S1000 all day. Now let's see that Ducati V4. Here we have our Ducati Panigale V4 in red, and we have the 26 M1000RR in blue. And you can see how we're making power here. We're making about the same peak, 207 on both, because I picked a random run here for the Panigale V4, and both the same mods. Keep in mind, our Panigale V4 has a slip-on system. It has an air filter in these runs, and we have a full system on the M1000RR with an IAT relocation. There's no velocity stacks on either of these bikes yet. And you can see down here, that shift cam just owning stuff against that V4, and then we start trading places right here at about 8,000 or 8,800 RPM. That's really kind of like we're getting to track duty right here. And the Panigale carries over this whole thing. I mean, there's a point where we're making 12 wheel horsepower, but of course that's a dip, and that's a typical stack dip you see here for the BMWs. But we're averaging, let's just say right around here, and we're averaging about 7 to 10 wheel horsepower until we get to the top here, and we actually trade spaces. Right around here, about 13,800 RPM, where the BMW is actually making 2 wheel more horsepower, but that Ducati carries a little more RPM. So if we were to race these two again, just like we saw in that stage 1 video, I think that Ducati is just coming around this bike. The Ducati is just an insane bike the way it makes power. Now we can't check out the Aprilia quite yet because I'm still doing the exhaust. We're really excited about that bike actually. But let's go ahead and check out the CBR RRR similar mods. All right, CBR RRR here in red and 26 M1000 in blue. And do we even really need to talk about this? I even put a run up here that was actually stacked, so I don't have a non-stack run for the RRR. So this is with velocity stacks, a full system, and an air filter. So it even has more mods than the M does, and the M is just rinsing this thing across the entire band. I mean, this is belt to ass here, 15 wheel horsepower, a little bit crazy, and 10 wheel torque. The CBR's one redeeming quality has a little more RPM, but that ain't gonna save it from this disparity in power. The M1000 is walking all over this thing. And now that we've wrapped that up, let's go ahead and get the fuel drained out of this bike, get the 91 out. We're gonna put some MR12 in here and see what the maximum amount of power we can make with this bike is on stage 2. So the MR12 runs are done. I went ahead and put up the numbers here we have in red is going to be our stage 2, and blue is gonna be our stage 1. You're seeing right there, we've got literally not even a half a horsepower difference. It's negligible at this point. But look how much power we're making across the range here. This is 6 wheel horsepower right here, just from removing that suitcase underneath here. It's about that across the entire mid-range here. We're getting a whole lot of power here. And up top, it's about the same, which is basically what I predicted. I didn't know if the oval ports are gonna make a difference, but not really making much of a difference here as we're seeing 216, 215. They're trading places basically up there up top. And I'm not surprised by these results at all. I mean, if it would have made a crazy amount of power up top, I would have been like, wow, that's insane. But usually it's about the same, if not 1 horsepower up top. The BMW exhaust is extremely efficient. So now we're finished doing those comparisons. Now it's time to test some velocity stacks and see if we can get some maximum power to this, because a lot of you know that we've developed velocity stacks and they're kind of the go-to for everyone on the BMWs for the K66, K67, which is the S1000 and M1000RR platforms. We made some new ones to accommodate these new throttle bodies. Let's go ahead and test them one by one, and I'll show you guys exactly the numbers they produce. So I have our prototype velocity stack sitting right here. I have 3 different sets, so I have to pull the bike apart 3 different times, install 3 different sets, see which one works the best, and then we can go from there. Now, usually we have these as billet. People that have bought our velocity stacks know we have billet design. These are composite just for testing, but you can see we have the dust ring on here, we have the O-ring at the bottom. These are still a very good set right here, but these will be billet when it's all said and done after we find an actual size. wrapped up with the pulls here, and you guys can decide what we got here. So, red, we've got with stacks, and blue, we've got without stacks. Of course, peak to peak, we are only looking at 1 horsepower, even less than 1 horsepower. Kind of trades places, but you can see it's 1 horsepower all the way there. Nothing crazy, but we also gain power in the low and mid-range, which is kind of unheard of for a velocity stack. Now, the stacks we pulled out of this bike are already lowered from the 21 through 24 M1000RR. It's even a lower profile, so it's hard to improve upon something that they've already improved on, because that's what we did. We made them lower, made them a little bit wider, and now from here we went even a little bit lower. We're not messing around with dyno runs here. We're at about 120 dyno runs, so we want to make sure everything's consistent and good. In the mid-range here, we're gaining about 5 wheel horsepower we see right there, and about 3 wheel torque, and that eliminates that bump that we see from OEM here, that stack bump. And then down low, we're getting some gains, even at 5,000 RPM. So overall, we consider this definitely a success. Now, we also did VP Racing fuels with the velocity stacks as well to compare it against stock. Let's see that. Now, you probably don't have to do a whole lot of guessing on what is what here. The red run is our VP Racing fuel, and the blue run is our 91 pump gas. And you can see the gains are massive across the entire band, with the greatest being here up the top with 12 wheel horsepower and 4 wheel torque. But we're still getting a lot in the mid-range as well. I mean, this is just making power with VP Racing fuel, and it's kind of something we expected anyway. And with our peak power going up to 217 rather than the 216 that we saw before. And it looks like I was proven true. Exhaust mods on BMWs up top, not making a whole lot of power, but we are making a whole lot from stock to tuned. So let me explain this graph a little bit here. So red is going to be stage 2, exhaust, velocity stacks, IAT, flapper kit, all that fun stuff. This is maximum effort basically for our stuff, and it's at 217 wheel horsepower, insanely good. And of course, VP Racing fuel as well. Now, the blue run here is going to be the same exact mods, except this one is running 91 pump gas. And then in green here, we have a completely stock 2026 M1000RR, no mods whatsoever, stock tuning, and on pump gas. This is the kind of gains we're looking at when you put the work in here, guys. This is over 30 wheel horsepower up top and 20 wheel horsepower for just putting pump gas in. So 30 wheel for VP Racing fuel and 20 wheel on pump gas. That's crazy. And it's not just there, it's across the entire RPM range. I mean, even right here, like I've always told you guys in the past, the restrictions from the stock tuning are in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and now 5th gear as well. We see it right here in that green light where it's being restricted in 5th gear. Now 6th gear, the restriction's gone, finally. And in 2nd gear, it's the worst, and it gets slowly less worse as you go up in gears, 5th gear being the least worst of the restricted gears. There's gains even down here at 3,000 RPM. It's across the entire power band. This is basically a different bike completely. So now we got those comparisons done. I know you guys have seen us do those 1st through 6th gear pulls. It makes the bike look very intimidating, looks awesome on camera. But what does that look like on an actual dyno? So this is our run right here where I went 1st through 6th. And you can see 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th gear right there. It's making about the same power, right? I mean, it's a little more. The blue run right here being all that 1st through 6th, and it's making a hair more than it is on our most powerful run in 5th. Okay, cool. Doesn't look like it's manipulated, right? But if I'm a dyno operator and I want to go over here to graph options and I go to use legacy smoothing and I click OK, now all of a sudden we're at 221 wheel horsepower versus 217. That 217 peak number never changed, but the 221 definitely changed because of the legacy smoothing. I just want to let you guys know that if you go to a dyno place and they give you a dyno graph like this is not a proper dyno graph. You want a single gear, preferably whatever's closest to 1-to-1. I usually use 5th gear myself, and that will give you the proper number there. So even if I use legacy smoothing on or off, I'm making 217 on a properly formatted graph versus that 221 versus 217. So what goes into stage 2 that's different than stage 1? There's a multitude of things we go through and optimize on stage 2. And I would say stage 2 is more for the track person that lives above 10,000 RPM. If you're kind of the casual rider and maybe you do a track day once or twice a year, stage 1 is perfectly fine. I think you'll be completely satisfied with it. Even if you decide to change, let's say the slip-on or something like that, it will actually adjust. That full-time closed-loop system I was talking about earlier will adjust for that. So you don't need any new tuning. Now, stage 2 is nowhere near the ragged edge of the bike. It is still 100% safe. We leave a lot of fail-safes on the bike itself. Just like I said with the full-time closed-loop system, if a sensor fails, it goes into an open-loop map that we've constructed, which is safe, and you will see a check engine light to fix whatever needs to be fixed. Now, there are a few other tuners on the market. I'm not going to name names, but they turn off all of the check engine lights for the bike, basically. So you can unplug an O2 sensor, no check engine light. You can unplug your pair valve, no check engine light. we leave all of that stuff on so you know what's going on with your motorcycle, because that's the safest way to be. Even the engine braking and decel fueling gets some love just for those track riders when they're coming down from a high RPM. It allows the bike to feel a lot more smooth when you're setting for your turn and trail braking. The whole idea behind Stage 2 is the bike is supposed to be extremely predictable and confidence inspiring. That's exactly how we want it. Now, while making power is important, keeping the bike really predictable is more important for us. That way you can focus on your riding, your reference points, your apex, instead of, oh no, if I sneeze and I hit the throttle, it's gonna get away from me. Or the dead spot, when it comes in at 9,000 RPM, I'm gonna start losing this and I'm gonna start running wide because the power comes on. You won't have to worry about that at all with our tuning. And we've gotten this feedback from not only our track riders, but we had a couple BMW test riders actually test it, and that was the same feedback they gave us, which was the bike is extremely confidence inspiring, smooth with the tip in, smooth for decelling, braking, things like that. It actually makes the bike overall smoother and more confidence inspiring. So now we have our dyno numbers. Let's go ahead and get some GPS numbers now and compare that against Stage 1 and see if we actually made some quantifiable gains in the real world.
All right, guys, this is it. Stage 2 on the BMW M1000RR for 2026. And not really night and day like it was from stock to Stage 1, but you definitely feel more of an urgency in the throttle and more power all around for sure. The one thing I definitely noticed is the quick shifter. We've made it more aggressive with Stage 2, and only when you're on the throttle. So right now, you can hear it and sounds completely civil, no issues right there. And now if I give it some throttle, for example, so let me go back down here. You hear it crack into gear when you give it more throttle. Now, the exhaust sounding like that hasn't sounded this good since the Gen 1, Gen 2 S1000RR, and I'm dead serious when I'm saying that. Anyone that has a Gen 1, Gen 2, that's the 2010 through 2014 S1000RR, when they give it a little bit of gas and they put it into gear, it cracks just like that when you have the modification. And that's the first thing I noticed. The mid-range is so much more full now. We have a lot more power in the mid-range. If you guys have an M1000 at home and you got 6,000 RPM, now check this out. And of course, this has our adaptive mapping in it, meaning I can use the race gas we use on the dyno and then put pump gas in here and not change maps. We have a whole system in here based on knock with timing control, and based on knock feedback, it will go to a lower timing table. The bike will feel less powerful on pump gas, of course, but that's how it's supposed to feel when you put pump gas back into it. When you put the race gas back into it, same map, you'll feel it get incrementally more and more powerful. It's a great system, and a lot of people can't really wrap their head around this new technology, especially the full-time closed loop stuff that we do with the motorcycle. And we're just trying to utilize the technology the motorcycle inherently comes with. Now with the mods we have here, I'm expecting some good things on our pulls here with the 60 through 130, 100 to 150, and top speed. This is where we're actually gonna see what the performance does on this motorcycle. Let's check it out. Okay, we are here getting our post flash at 60 through 130, 100 to 150, and top speed. Let's see if we made any improvements over Stage 1. Guys saw it, that was a 4.0 60 through 130 and a 3.7 100 through 150 with a top speed of 190 miles per hour. You can tell it was made for World Superbike when they raised the compression a full point, but they're still asking for 91 pump gas. When you add some octane, this bike comes to life. And looking here at the IAT, it's actually reading ambient right here. Now, like I said, for freeway riding, that doesn't really matter so much because it eventually gets around the same temperature. It does read high a few degrees. This is actually reading accurate right now to the degree, but this at low speed keeps the bike a lot more consistent. Obviously, a little bit more gas right now as well, so I'm gonna go fill up. So all the mods combined equate to a monster like this, and it still looks stock, I can still hear the wind right now because I have a stock muffler on the bike currently, and this bike is extremely well mannered at low speed. This bike is literally a Swiss Army knife. It does everything well. So it's amazing what we can do from stock, which was something like a 5-second 60 through 130, and now we're at a 4-second 60 through 130, and we raised that top speed by quite a significant margin as well. And these downshifts are amazing. Oh my God, I love the way the quick shifter sounds. Wow. So to wrap things up here, stage 2, this transforms the bike for anyone that's doing racing stuff. So like we were saying before, 10,000 RPM and above, if you live around there, stage 2 is for you, and we're not compromising anything down low. We were still in the dyno, we were still doing our 25, 50, and 75% throttle percentages, and we still maintain complete rideability of the motorcycle even with stage 2. So if you're not a racer, stage 2 probably isn't for you, because you won't really notice the difference between stage 1 and the tweaks we do to make stage 2 work. But if you are a person that does like above 10,000 RPM, it is a noticeable difference, and as we see, quantifiable as well. And as you can see, we still maintain complete functionality of the motorcycle. Still got my cruise control. I still have my riding modes completely functional here. I can go to road. Yeah, that feels a lot more dull if I go into Race Pro here. Yeah, a lot more response in Race Pro. So everything is just improved, but still maintained its complete functionality, guys. And now that we see the performance on the street, completely dwarfs what we see on the dyno. Dynos are good tuning tools, but they're not the end-all be-all of the story. I'm seeing performance on this bike that doesn't make sense. And that's because of the way the motor's put together, the way the ram air is coming in when we're doing those speed runs. There's variables in the dyno I can't replicate 200 mile per hour wind going into the inlet on the dyno, so we can't get a true indication of number. In fact, I made a whole video for dyno tuning, and we actually put a 600 CFM blower in the front inlet of an M1000RR. This is a 2021 model, and it made a consistent 2 to 3 wheel more horsepower across the entire board just doing that. That can't even mimic even anywhere close to 200 mile per hour ram air effect. So with the velocity stacks, you're not going to see any real effect on the dyno until you go on the street. That's when we start seeing this stuff. The IAT Kit, you're not going to see anything noticeable on the dyno at all. It's when you hit the street and you notice there's more consistency in stop and go. That's when you're going to notice it. With our stage 2 at the track, this thing you'll feel above 10,000 RPM is a weapon, and the mid-range completely filled out now. This is honestly a great track bike now. This is exactly how I want it from the factory, honestly, exactly how I want it from the factory. So that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you guys really enjoyed it, and if you guys have any suggestions of what we should do in the future or what I've missed on this motorcycle that you'd like to see me talk about, please let me know in the comments. That's going to wrap this one up, and I'll see you guys in the next one.